Hey, what's up guys? Welcome to the channel. This Saturday is UFC London. In the co-main event, we have a very intriguing middleweight fight. Jack Hermansson versus Chris Curtis, and this is going to be my full breakdown and prediction for this fight. I've already done a prediction video for the main event, Curtis Blaydes versus Tom Aspinall. If you guys want to check it out after this video, I will link it down in the description. But this is a very important middleweight fight for both guys. Jack Hermansson is kind of fighting to stay relevant in the division. And Chris Curtis, I mean, he's been waiting his entire career to get some notoriety in the UFC. He's been battling tough guys outside the UFC. He's been taking short notice fights. And now he has a top 10 opponent in Jack Hermansson. He's stepping in on short notice. This was originally supposed to be Jack Hermansson versus Darren Till. And Darren Till fell out with an injury. And Chris Curtis, in typical Chris Curtis fashion, said, I will step in. He just fought a few weeks ago. This is a very quick turnaround for Chris Curtis. And if Chris Curtis wins, and I actually did an interview with Chris Curtis. I will also link that down in the description as well. But if Chris Curtis wins, he's on the short list of potential contenders for the middleweight title. I know that sounds crazy considering he's not even in the top 15. I think he deserves to be in the top 15 after a win over Rodolfo Vieira. But when you have a champion like Israel Adesanya, who has cleaned out the division, he's fought multiple guys twice, beat him twice, Robert Whittaker, Marvin Vettori, he beat Paulo Costa. He's pretty much cleaned out the division. He's going to be fighting Alex Pereira towards the end of this year. But after that, if he wins that fight, and that's a big if, who's going to be next? And if Chris Curtis can pull off a victory here against Jack Hermansson, I think he's maybe one fight away. And Jack Hermansson, for all the struggles that he's had, I really think, fresh names is what the UFC is looking for. So if Adesanya beats Pereira, whoever wins this fight is going to be a very good spot within the middleweight division. So if you look at the tail of the tape for this fight, Jack Hermansson is ranked number 8 in the UFC official rankings. Chris Curtis is not ranked. Jack Hermansson is 34. Chris Curtis is 35. Jack Hermansson is 6'1". Chris Curtis is 5'10". Jack Hermansson has a 77.5-inch reach. Chris Curtis has a 75-inch reach. So a slight height and a slight reach advantage for Jack Hermansson. If you look at Jack Hermansson, he has 29 pro MMA fights. He is 22-7. And out of his 22 wins, he has 11 wins by KO, 6 by submission, and 5 by decision. He's coming into this fight on a one-fight losing streak. He lost a split decision to Sean Strickland, but if you watch that fight, it should not have been a split decision. Of course, it was Saul D'Amato that gave it to Jack Hermansson. We know what kind of track record he has. But Sean Strickland went out there, defended the takedowns, and just busted Jack Hermansson up for 5 rounds. That was back in February of this year. And who is Sean Strickland? He's Chris Curtis's main training partner. These guys have been training forever. They're good friends. So who better to step in? I mean, he kind of has the inside game plan from Sean Strickland, who just fought him back in February. The fight before that was against Edmund Shabazian, and he won by decision. That was back in May of last year, so not super active of Jack Hermansson. But in this fight, he lost the first round. He was getting pieced up in the first round by Edmund Shabazian. Edmund Shabazian started to fade, and then Jack Hermansson was able to get him down and beat him up on the ground and win the second and third round. But if you watch the first round of that fight, it was not looking good for Jack Hermansson. The fight before that was an amazing fight against Marvin Vettori back in December of 2020. I believe he was supposed to fight Darren Till here as well. Jack Hermansson's had constant opponent switches. Darren Till fell out. Marvin Vettori stepped in. That's a tough matchup to take on relatively short notice. And this was an amazing back and forth battle. But Marvin Vettori, we know how good Marvin Vettori is, and he was just the better striker. He was able to defend any takedown attempts from Jack Hermansson, and just able to just outpoint him and win a decision. But that was an amazing fight. Both guys, I think their stock both went up in that fight. Fight before that, and probably the most impressive win on Jack Hermansson's resume, is a first-round submission win over Kelvin Gastelum. I am still high on Kelvin Gastelum. I know he's lost a lot of fights, but the guy is in every fight that he's in. I thought he arguably beat Jarrett Cannonier in his last fight, and he went out there, Jack Hermansson went out there, took Kelvin Gastelum down. There was a scramble, took him down, and got a heel hook very, very quick. And that just goes to show you how good Jack Hermansson's submission skills were. That was all the way back in July of 2020. And then before that, he got KO'd by Jarrett Cannonier in the second round. But we know what kind of power Jarrett Cannonier has. I think he caught him with an uppercut, followed him to the ground, and finished him off with strikes. But, there's really no shame in getting finished by Jared Cannonier. And out of his 29 fights, he's only ever lost twice by knockout, and the other one of those was to Thiago Santos. So Jack Hermansson only getting finished by guys with real nuclear power. You look at Chris Curtis, he has 37 pro fights. The guy has been around forever. He has 29 wins, 8 losses. He's out of those 29 wins, he's finished 16 by knockout. So we know what Chris Curtis likes to do. 1 by submission and 12 by decision. He comes in on this fight on an 8-fight win streak, which is absolutely insane. This is a guy that was on Dana White's Contender Series a few years back, got a great finish, and didn't get a contract. The UFC's overlooked Chris Curtis for a while, and he got a call for a short notice fight against Phil Hawes. He accepted the fight. He stepped in. Then Phil Hawes kind of turned it down a little bit and asked for more time for whatever reason, and it ended up getting scheduled like a couple weeks later, but it was still short notice for Chris Curtis, and he steps in, and a lot of people thought Phil Hawes was going to win this fight, and he brutally finishes Phil Hawes in the first round. That was at UFC 268. After that, he steps in on short notice again a month later on December 4th, the Aldo Font card, and he went out there and TKO'd Brendan Allen in the second round. This was another fight that a lot of people were counting him out, and he went out there and finished Brendan Allen. I mean, I know Phil Hawes and Brendan Allen aren't ranked in the top 15, but they were both surging guys, young guys, that a lot of people thought would become contenders within the division. And then his most recent fight was against Rodolfo Vieira, June 25th. He went out there, just stuffed all the takedowns of Rodolfo Vieira, and was able just to outland him on the feet. He was ripping to the body, just beating him up, and he stuffed every single takedown in this fight. And Rodolfo Vieira is massive, a massive guy, and I was wondering how he would do. Would he be able to stuff all the takedowns? And he went out there and stuffed every takedown. His last loss was against Ray Cooper III, where he was KO'd. But this was on a night where he fought twice. He fought Magomed Kirimov, and then in the same night he fought Ray Cooper. So I don't really count that, honestly. I know you have to, but even so, Ray Cooper, one of the best guys outside of the UFC, and he clipped him and put him out. And that's the only time in his 37 pro fights that Chris Curtis has ever been knocked out. Of his losses, he's lost 1 by knockout, 1 by submission. The last time he was submitted was all the way back in 2011. So even if you're able to take Chris Curtis down and control him, you're really not able to submit him. And in 2 of those losses against Magomed Kirimov, which he fought back-to-back because I think somebody fell out of a PFL tournament or something along those lines, because he fought the same guy in July and then in October. And he was taken down and controlled with the grappling of Magomed. But he's shown vast improvements in his grappling since then. And now he's fighting Jack Hermansson, and we know what Jack Hermansson wants to do. Jack Hermansson is good enough at striking where he'll just mix it up with you, and then he's going to look for the takedown, and then he's going to look to either eke out a decision by taking you down and beating you up on the ground, or he's going to be looking for the submission. And he has lightning fast submissions. We saw that against Kelvin Gastelum. But it's not like, he's submitting guy after guy. He's not a guy that's like, you're worried about it, like Rusamal Palahares or Damian Maia. He's not that level of submission artist. Like Rodolfo Vieira, you get down with him, you're kind of worried about it. Same with like Charles Oliveira. I'm talking about different divisions, but you get the point. Jack Hermansson is good, but I don't know if he's a massive, massive threat on the ground. And when I look at paths to victory, I see multiple paths to victory for both guys. I could see Chris Curtis winning by TKO or decision. I could see him finishing Jack Hermansson, but I could also see him stuffing the takedowns and just beating him up for 3 rounds, or maybe even losing a round. Maybe gets taken down early, gets back up, ends up losing the first round on the judges' scorecards, but then coming back, being more conservative in the second and third, and just landing on the feet and beating him up in the second and third and winning 29-28. But also Jack Hermansson, if he is relentless with the takedowns. And I think if he can continue to shoot it on takedowns on Chris Curtis, maybe he can cause a scramble where he catches Chris Curtis out of position and looks for that submission and finds that submission. But I don't think that's super likely. I mean, in 37 pro fights, he's only ever been submitted 1 time. So I just don't think that's super likely. And again, it's not like Jack Hermansson is this crazy submission threat. He has decent submissions. So I really think if Jack Hermansson wins, he wins this fight by decision. And I think Chris Curtis, he can win pretty much any way but submission. I think he could KO him. I think he could TKO him, or I think he could win by decision. And meanwhile, you know, I already talked about the ways I think Jack Hermansson can win. In this fight, skill for skill, I think that Chris Curtis, you know, barring being worried about the threat of the takedown, because we've seen it and I talk about it all the time in prediction videos. We see guys who have the threat of the grappling, the threat of the takedown, and they're fighting a superior striker, but they're able to outstrike them because of that threat of the takedown. And outside of that, I think Chris Curtis is a much better striker. And I respect Jack Hermansson. You know, he's coming in off a loss against Sean Strickland, and now he's taking a fight against Chris Curtis, a very tough fight against an unranked guy. There's not a lot of reward for Jack Hermansson here. And, you know, the way I really see this fight playing out, I think this is the best possible matchup for Chris Curtis in the top 10. You know, I still think Jack Hermansson's very tough, but I think if you had to kind of pick out a top 10 guy, okay, Chris Curtis' style just matches up perfectly with him. I think it's Jack Hermansson, and my official prediction is going to be Chris Curtis by decision. And the way I see this fight playing out is Jack Hermansson getting outstruck. I think Chris Curtis is going to start off a little bit slow because he's going to be worried about the takedown. In that first round against Rodolfo Vieira, he was a little bit, you know, of a slow starter because he didn't want to mess up and end up on the ground. And I think that's how this fight is going to play out against Jack Hermansson. First round could go either way. I think Jack Hermansson's going to look for a couple takedowns, probably get stuffed. He might get one, you know, halfway through the round. But I think Chris Curtis, his wrestling and his takedown defense has improved so much over the years. I think even if he gets taken down, he'll get right back up. Or maybe it'll be one of those things where it's not technically counted as a takedown because Jack Hermansson never cements the position. But I think the first round will be kind of close. And I think as the fight goes on, Jack Hermansson, I know he's gone 5 rounds before, but his cardio hasn't looked particularly great, especially in the Strickland fight, in the Edmund Shabazian fight. The Strickland fight, it wasn't terrible. You know, that was a 5-round fight as well. I forgot about that. I thought it was 3 rounds. But you know, his cardio isn't that great. Chris Curtis has never lost a 5-round fight, and he said he actually prefers 5-round fights. He would have preferred this to be a 5-round fight. So we know he has cardio to go all 5 rounds, and this guy is just a guy that constantly comes in and proves everyone wrong. And now, you know, this is his 3rd short notice fight in the UFC. He's only had, you know, this will be his 4th fight in the UFC. So 75% of his fights are coming in on short notice. And I think he'll be able to stuff the takedowns of Jack Hermansson. And I just think he's going to beat him up on the feet and outpoint him. Jack Hermansson's very durable. I don't really see Chris Curtis putting him away unless maybe he lands like a nasty body shot, because that's another thing I love about Chris Curtis. He's constantly going to the body, and that's a good kind of defensive technique when you have a guy that's constantly looking to change levels on you and take you down. It's just ripping to the body, because then next thing you know, you're landing an uppercut or you're landing a punch to the jaw as they shoot in on a sloppy takedown. And I think Jack Hermansson, even though he has cardio not to be completely exhausted, I think as the fight goes on, his shots just get sloppier and sloppier. And I think Chris Curtis is going to be tagging him on the feet. I think Jack Hermansson will survive. He has a good chin. And I think that Chris Curtis probably wins this fight 29-28. I'm going to say the first round is razor close and goes to Jack Hermansson. Maybe he gets a takedown. Chris Curtis pops right back up, and it's kind of even on the feet because Jack Hermansson's a very good striker, but I think Chris Curtis is just a little bit better of a striker. So I see Chris Curtis winning this fight by decision. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Don't forget to like the video, and thank you so much for watching.